Hi guys, it's Grace with Grace Gets Gastric, and I am here today for a Victories, Vulnerabilities, and Vices video. So for those of you who are following SmilinsShrinking, which you totally should, she is awesome. She does weight loss surgery videos. She had the DS a couple of years ago. She got full body plastics, and she really thoroughly documented lots of great information over on her channel, and I'll link her below. But she posted a video a while ago now, maybe like a month ago, talking about kind of a call to action or a call to making a video to talk about our victories, vulnerabilities, and vices. And I thought the video was really interesting. I really enjoyed watching people's responses, but I hesitated on making my own video because I felt like I wasn't really at the point where I was the person who should be making a video. I think in my head I still really associate myself as being still a weight loss newbie. I think because so many of the people that I follow and the people who were SmilinsShrinking and the people who were making videos with her are all kind of a year or so ahead of me, and so I feel like I am later on, obviously, and I am, but that doesn't mean that I'm not in a similar stage, even if I'm not quite as far along as they are. I am 18 months post-op. I am about I am maintaining at this point, which is bizarre to me. But I do think I'm hitting some of these roadblocks, thoughts, mental stuff. Anyways, I do think that I have things to say in this arena. So I figured, why not make a video talking about it? If you guys have been watching my recent weekly updates, you'll know I'm kind of going through a bit of a funk. I'm filming this right before my trip to Peru. By the time this posts, I believe I will be in Peru. I haven't decided yet when this will post, but so I'll probably be on my trip when this goes up. So I think just the lead up to my trip, the throwing off of my schedule, the stress of it, a bunch of other things, my upcoming plastics, knowing that I'm gonna really be hunkering down on all the things after my trip has just combined to put me in this really weird mental headspace, and I've been struggling a little bit, so I thought that maybe this would be a good and useful video for me to both make and for y'all to see. So we will start out with victories. I'm gonna do 3 victories, 2 vulnerabilities, and 1 vice, and I don't know if that's actually what she told us to do, but I'm gonna do that anyways. So victories, 3 victories. So the first is working out. I started working out 2 to 4 times a week when I was 8 weeks post-op VSG. So it was the first week of March in 2018. And since then, I have worked out 2 to 4 times a week consistently. So since March 2018. So that is about 18 months, not quite 18 months, 16 months. That's incredible. That is in the longest that I've ever consistently worked out in my entire life, by a lot. I have been, I've did the couch to 5K, I ran a 5K, I have been doing weightlifting, primarily weightlifting, 2 to 4 times a week. I've been doing yoga, I've done body pump classes, I've done all kinds of classes. I've tried bar, I've tried Zumba, hated Zumba, I've tried a lot of different things. I've kind of figured out what I enjoy, and I've been really consistent. I've gotten to a point where Tuesdays and Thursdays have been for a while my non-negotiable workouts, unless I have thrown out my back and even when I threw out my back, I was going and just walking. So I didn't get out of the habit. There were a couple of times where it was so bad I couldn't walk really, so I didn't go, but very few times, unless I was really sick. Even days where I had to stay up really late the night before, I would move my workouts so that I could accommodate that. And that's just, I'm really proud of how far I've come in terms of working out. That is not something that in my entire life I've ever been able to sustain for more than a few months at a time. And the fact that for 16 straight months I have not gone longer than a week without working out is pretty incredible. And that is including trips that I've taken. I know that my trip to Peru will be the longest I will go without going into a gym. since I had surgery, since I started working out right after surgery. So I am going to be walking a ton while I'm in Peru. I'm going to be hiking, but I do not anticipate going to a gym. I do not know that any of the hotels we will be staying at will have gyms. If they do, I honestly will probably go to one, but I'm not going to force it. So yeah, that's for the fact that Peru will be the longest I will go without setting foot in a gym since I started working out after surgery. That's pretty incredible. So, victory. Second victory is I am basically but where I wanted to be when I had the surgery. My goal was to be a quote unquote normal size. I wanted to basically be able to go into any store and generally find something that I can wear. I didn't want to be constrained, particularly like, for example, with travel. I'm traveling to Peru. If, God forbid, knock on wood, my luggage gets lost in transit, I don't have to worry about being able to find clothes that fit me. If I need to run to the store and pick up something, I feel confident I'll be able to find that. And when I studied abroad in Chile, when I was in college, that was a real concern. I wore out some of the stuff I brought with me because I just couldn't find other things. So that is absolutely a victory. I am where I wanted to be. I've been maintaining more or less for 6 months. Within a range. I've been pretty consistent for the past 6 months or so. I have been able to, like I said, fit in what I want to fit in. I feel like I'm really physically kind of where I wanted to be, which is awesome. And then kind of going along with that, my third victory is that there isn't anything physically that I want to do that I can't. There is nothing that my weight or my size is holding me back from anymore. There are things that are not super easy or comfortable due to loose skin, stuff like squatting. The loose skin gets in the way. It also throws off my weight distribution, so that's kind of uncomfortable. There are things in yoga that are not super comfortable because of my stomach and my skin, but in terms of I can still do yoga. I can still do squats. They're not as good as I would like, but I can still do them. I can run. Again, I have my hip issue, so it's not like I'm running marathons, but I can run if I have to. Physically, all of the things that I wanted to be able to do, moving my body, walking, being more active, all of that stuff I can do. For example, I'm booking things for Peru, and there are a couple of things with weight limits, and they were in kilograms, right? I didn't even bother translating because I knew that I would be below whatever minimum. I'm under 200 pounds. There's basically no weight limits on things that are over 200 pounds. So yeah, that was a cool moment to realize I don't have to be concerned about being able to do the things I want to do. So, vulnerabilities. 2 vulnerabilities. The first is coping mechanism. So I still really need to work on finding better coping mechanisms. I am more aware of it than I have ever been, but food is still my go-to coping mechanism when I am in particular stressed or anxious. That has bbeen coming up a lot in the past few weeks with this trip coming up. Work is pretty stressful right now. There's this, today, there's this weird situation with a friend of mine where she hasn't been responding to my emails, and the last exchange we had was polite, but we were on different sides of an argument, and I don't think that anything was said on either side that was particularly intense, and she is not someone who is normally passive aggressive, but she hasn't been responding, and it is probably not at all to do with me. It is probably because I know that her life is really crazy right now, but I'm telling myself a story in my head that it's because she's upset and she's being passive aggressive, and I know that this is very likely not the case because that's not who she is, but it's what I'm telling myself, and it's making me really anxious, and all I want to do is eat. And I'm aware of that. I've been trying not to do that, and like I said, planning this trip, trying to get everything squared away before we leave, trying to get work all figured out before I go. The fact that I've got this plastics coming up, which are still 5 months away, but it is yeah, there's just a lot going on, and the desire to eat to soothe those feelings of discomfort are still super present. And that is something that, while I'm at least aware of it, and I was not aware of it when I was 350 pounds. So the fact that I'm at least aware when it's happening is good. And like there are times where, like right now, I am trying to make decent choices, but I do not have the spoons to be like taking on too many battles. And I think to an extent, sometimes it's okay to fall back on this device, this comforting device, this coping mechanism. But I ultimately would like to find one that is a little bit better. I have been using working out to a degree, but that also just takes up a lot more time than eating does. And so when you're stressed about not having enough time to do things, then taking 2 hours to go work out, and realistically it does take 2 hours because I have to get there, I have to work out, I have to shower, I have to get back, it's a whole thing. So vulnerability. And the second is, I would say, just the mental fatigue, the frustration, the exhaustion that comes along with this constant vigilance that is, at least for me right now, necessary in order for me to sustain. I have heard a number of people say, in order to maintain, you have to have a losing mindset. And I see how that is. It's sort of like, in order to maintain, you have to be thinking like you want to lose weight. And I do get that. I can see so easily how it would be very simple for things to kind of spiral out of control, to not, and that's like, I guess, the constant worry. And it's a vulnerability because it is exhausting, and there is just this sense sometimes where I'm just like, fuck it, I don't, the thought of having to do this for the next 60 years is, oh my God, exhausting. So there are definitely, I think, figuring out a way to be comfortable with the fact that this is going to be a lifelong thing. And, and I want to believe that there will be a day where this becomes more natural and more effortless, but I don't know that will happen. And I don't want to like set all of my hopes on this thing that may not ever happen for me, so yeah, in the scheme of things, I am still pretty recent out, it's crazy how quickly I have adapted to being this size, which is not to say that I don't still have some like mental hangups, but in some ways it feels like this is always the size I've been. I think this is kind of mentally how I've always seen myself. I don't think, I never saw myself as big as I was. And I think that this is kind of like my mental image, and it's just come to life. So I've adapted to it fairly quickly for someone who was obese their entire life, who has never been this size before. And so sometimes it's hard for me to remember that I have only been this size for like 6 months, and I've only lost weight in the past 2 years. That's when I started, about 2 years ago was when I really started losing weight for this weight loss process. And it's weird to not know how this will play out, if that makes sense. In some ways I feel, like I said, this is who I am. But I had 27 years of living life as not this person. And so, yeah, like, will those habits come back? Will they creep in? I worry about that. And so there's hence the constant vigilance. But then on the other hand, being so hyper vigilant is mentally draining. It's very taxing, and it does, I think, to an extent, inspire a bit of desire to spring back. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's a vulnerability. I do think that is something that makes me feel vulnerable, for sure. And it is a weakness, a point of of weakness where the things can creep back in. Meh. Anyways, let's go to the last one, which is vice. I'm going to do one vice, and that vice is sugar. Yeah. So, where do I start with sugar? I think I've come to realize that, and I've known this for a while, how addictive sugar can be. For me, I do not think that carbs in general are my personal enemy, the way they are for a lot of people, carbs overall. I don't think carbs, like, you know, it's like, I can have oatmeal, I can have milk, like, that doesn't trigger me. Sugar triggers me. And I don't, and it's hard for me to get to this point because I don't want it to. I want to be able to live in moderation, and I realistically know that saying like I'll never have a donut again is just not, it's not realistic. And the thing is if we lived in a world where sugar-free stuff was more readily available, I do think that it would be so much easier for me to give up sugar. The problem for me lies in the lack of alternatives. You know, I go to Starbucks, and at least Starbucks has some sugar-free flavors. They have so many less than they did when I worked there like 10 years ago. They have less sugar-free flavors than they used to. That's insane to me. Like alcoholic drinks. You know, if I'm going out to a bar and I want to try a cocktail, like there are never sugar-free options unless you get like a Diet Coke, and I hate Coke. I hate soda. So, you know, you know, and if I'm going clubbing, like I'll bring a Mio and I'll get a vodka water, but like if I'm at a bar, you know, like, or at a restaurant and I want to get like a fancy cocktail before dinner, you know, and I love fancy cocktails. And again, like in the scheme of things, fancy cocktails are pretty low on the list of things that fuck me up because I don't drink that often. It's rare that I get a fancy cocktail, but if I want one, there's like no sugar-free options for me. You know, if you go to a cupcake shop or a donut shop, you know, like they don't have sugar-free versions, even though they could make them, but they're not selling, and I get it, but it's just, that's the frustrating thing, is that I think I would be more on board with the sugar-free thing if there were more options for me. But I'm just coming to the realization that sugar is a huge trigger for me. If I eat sugar, I crave sugar, I want more sugar. It's a really slippery slope, and I have a very, very hard time breaking out of that cycle. You know, like when I go on vacation and I allow myself sugary stuff, I have a really hard time coming back and breaking out of that. And that's why when I come back from those kinds of vacations, I try to go super strict, like only whole foods or an egg fast or something to mentally break my tether to sugar. It's not so much that I'm like trying to immediately lose the weight from vacation. It's that my brain starts craving cookies and candy, not even candy really, but like cookies in particular are like my huge downfall. You know, just all the sugar. So I'm kind of coming to a point where I'm realizing that sugar is going to have to play a limited to zero role in my life. I mean, realistically, it can't be zero. It just, but it can be mostly zero. You know, like there are going to be times in my life where I have sugar, but I've got to get to myself to a point where I remember, and it's not even just the addiction, but also if certain things will make me feel like shit, you know, and it's so inconsistent is the hard thing. I don't know the type of sugar, but there are some things I eat and I get like a sugar crash, you know, 30 minutes within eating. I feel awful. I'm fuzzy. I can't focus. I'm exhausted. I don't feel well. It's just, and that feeling is so terrible, but I forget about it. Or I'm like, maybe this time it won't happen, or like, I don't know if this food will trigger it. And so it's just like this vicious cycle. And I know that I really need to have sugar and I need to take a break, but that will be realistically a thing for after my vacation, because I mean, I don't anticipate eating like a crazy amount of sugar, but I'm definitely gonna have some pisco sours. So anyways, those are kind of my victories, vulnerabilities, and vices. Lots of rambles, as has been kind of the usual for me these days. I'm sure that you guys can tell that I am processing some things. I'm working through some things, trying to figure out where my head is at I don't know. And so I'm sort of, in my quest to find a freaking therapist, in the absence of that, hi guys, you guys get to hear some of the mental process. So apologies if it's not always coherent or not always super succinct or well thought out, but that is just because I'm not really sure what's happening. But I hope this video is interesting, helpful. It was good to kind of get some stuff out there and continue to make progress on this never-ending quest. Anyways, guys, thank you for being here with me. As always, I really appreciate it. I really appreciate your comments. I really appreciate your support, and I will talk to you all when I get back from Peru.